Cool. Welcome, everybody. I was looking back at my notes. This is the 10th Let Me Introduce You interview we've done. It's been fun, and it's an honor this time to have Mr. Wade Reeser with us. Wade and I go back quite a ways, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. But Wade is the president CEO of Big Bear Mountain Resorts. What we're going to do is kind of talk about his life growing up here in Big Bear and off to college. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Big Bear Mountain Resorts and Alterra and how that whole thing is organized, because you might find that kind of interesting. And so, Wade, thanks for taking your time. I know your life is crazy, and we appreciate you taking some time to share with us. And if there was ever a Big Bear boy, this guy, it happens to be it. And
Yeah.
so let's go back, Wade. You literally grew up in Big Bear and went to school all the way through in Big Bear, if that's correct. Talk a little bit about that whole thing.
That's true, Phil. Both my parents went to high school up here. My stepdad went to high school up here and grew up here, and obviously born and raised here. Went to school here from kindergarten all the way up, just like a lot of us, honestly. And like many, was probably pretty excited to get out of here, and then realized after a little bit of being out of here how unique and special this place can be, and came back. Never left roots though, that's for sure, and we'll get into that, I'm sure. But no, I've been here from the start, and don't have any big plans of going anywhere else.
There's some significant people. I mean, this is a fairly small town where there's some significant people that made an impact in your life as you grew up and went on.
The numbers are huge, Phil. Heck, I would say, and I'm sure we didn't talk about this but you would be one of them. I think Phil, if you guys didn't know, I kid around with him. He had the either honor or dishonor of being my principal in almost every school I was in through Big Bear. It seemed like he followed our class, whether it be North Shore to middle school to high school, and then we probably put him out of retirement at the end of that. But there's so many, whether it's and people that grew up in my age all heard the tales of the Coach Warren football days, and truthfully, that guy had a huge impact on me from figuring out what work was all about, and results, and being performance-based and those kinds of things, to guys like Coach Benson, who not only was a coach in high school, but I grew up with Mike and Rob. And so Coach Benson was very much a parental impact in my life. Coach Clifton. The list goes on and on. Dick Kuhn at the ski area, because I grew up literally at the ski area, then ended up working for him. Like I said, the list could continue to go pretty deep. But I think that's what happens in a small town, right? Is
Sure.
you get roots in a different way. And I've actually felt that as my kids have grown up, and I've coached all these dumb soccers and baseballs and all these things all the way through. And man, you get emotionally attached to these kids. And I've got, my oldest is 16, going to be a junior. And you're looking at some of these kids and you're going, these kids they're adults. And hopefully I had some impact like a lot of you guys had on us.
Sure. So in addition to your academic work at Big Bear High School, you were involved in a lot of athletics, and that's really where you began to do the ski thing, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, academic life. I think, my academic life was much more about sports than it was academics. That was a means to an end, I think, at some points. But I growing up, played all the soccer and the baseball, and then football started when I was in the middle school age, to have some youth football, and then into high school, and all through that. I started ski racing when I was about 6. My stepdad was the ski school director at Snow Summit for 49 years, Wally Weber. And so, I kid around that I not only grew up at the ski area, it literally was my babysitter. I'd get on chair 6, and Wally would say, just keep skiing this, and I'll be back in an hour and check in on you. And that's how my days went. And sometimes in the late afternoons, I'd get a call. They used to have actually we still do, an intercom that would go through the base area and chair 6 where the music would go. And so Marie Preston would page me, Wally's waiting for you down at the bottom. So it's time to come in. And so it was like the guy blowing the whistle at the pool, everybody out of the pool, and let's come down. So I'd come down and go home. But all through once I got into high school, I played football and ski raced. Again, ski racing took up a huge chunk of time between football and that. A lot of time I had to give up baseball because of skiing. And then Jack Oxney, again, one of those guys you say speaks into your life. Jack Oxney was huge and said, "Hey, you ever thought about playing golf?" And I thought, well, I can. It's a spring, so I'll work around your schedule. And next thing I know, I was totally hooked on that. Played that in high school because he worked around my ski schedule, and had a bunch of fun doing that. I think probably had one of the worst baseball swings as a golfer you could see, but figured it out after a little bit and had a blast. And really, I think that kept me engaged. And I look at this a lot of times when they talk about whether sports are something that's still important in school and is still part of belongs in academia and all of that stuff. And I'll tell you, I think sometimes there's an overstress on it, but at the same time, I think for some kids, it is a means to an end, and you realize, boy, in my efforts to make sure I'm doing the right thing in school because of sports, I actually got an education out of it too. And then your focus starts to change as you mature and get a little older. So,
but clearly athletics was a major part of certainly your through your school life, wasn't?
For sure. Did a lot of traveling as well for ski racing, which was, a very unique experience. Anyone that did that, even traveled to Europe I think I was a freshman in high school and spent Christmas and New Year's in Austria skiing, and it was like big growing up times, trying to figure out what the heck this life is about, and so it absolutely was a big part of my growing up and impact in my life for sure.
And you graduated from high school when?
1993.
So 93, now you're a big high school graduate, and what happens next in your life?
I begged my parents and wanted to try to keep playing football at one of these Division III schools that would take a small kid like me, and they're like, "No, we don't want you to owe that much money when you're done." And so figure something else out. So I went to Long Beach State, and went from being in a pretty small pond to being about in one of the biggest ponds you could be in at Long Beach, and it was huge. It was great. It was a really good experience of figuring what life was about, not just balancing sports in school, but it was like figuring out more than just sports in school, figuring out that there was more to life than just that. There was a balance of figuring out people and different people that I had never been exposed to living up here. And it was a really good time for me.
There was some kind of hidden advantages to you going there and saying you wanted to play football.
Yeah, I didn't know, again, God works in mysterious ways. I thought I would walk on and try to play. And, of course, this is a Division I school. They weren't very good, but Division I, and I was about 5 foot nothing, 100 and nothing pounds, and thought I could try to do something. And, but the advantage is because I did that, you could register with the athletes. So I got to register for my classes first, where it was really impacted. And they actually ended up cutting the whole football program. And, but because I was already in, I got to register first for the first couple years, and it helped me get out of there in 4 years. Thank God, because as I've reiterated, I wasn't a huge school guy. I don't know that I could have done it for much more than 4 years. And so I was able to get it out in and out of there in 4 years because I got the classes I needed and wanted. And
cool.
It was a huge advantage. And like I said, totally coincidental. And I was very fortunate.
Neat. So you finished in 4 years. Tell us, your degree was in?
Marketing, business. Total fell into that as well. I actually went to Long Beach with the thoughts of becoming either a physical therapist or a sports type doctor, and was fairly focused on that until I realized one of the first big classes you take is, anatomy, physiology. And man, that was a hard class. And I thought, man, I knocked it out of the park. I did as good as I could ever do. I got a B. And the counselor told me that I'd have to retake that class. And I went, what do you mean retake it? I got a B. And she said, well, in order to compete, you got to get an A if you want to get in the program. And I went, okay, I need to look at other majors, because I'm not going to do any better than a B in this class. That is as good as it's probably going to get from me. So we better figure something else out that I can get done in a hurry. So moved to business just because I thought it was a well-rounded major and something I could go figure out what I was going to do later. And that's kind of how that came into play.
Cool. So you're now the big college graduate, got a degree in business with a specialization in marketing, and you come back home, so to speak. And
yep, I all through college I continued to work part-time at the ski hill. So I started my senior year in high school. I stopped ski racing. It just got extremely expensive, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall that I wasn't going to be able to get a scholarship for ski racing. It got that atmosphere. They've actually put rules on it now, but at that time they were bringing in a lot of Europeans for these college teams that had there's a whole point system that goes on in ski racing. I won't bore you with the details, but the Euros had an opportunity to really look a lot better in their points than guys like me, especially from Southern California, could look. And so they were bringing in a lot of Euros for all those scholarship spots. I realized there was no way I was going to get one of those, and we were spending a lot of money traveling and trying to ski race. And football that year went really late into the year. We played all the way into the middle of December or something like that. So I had already started behind, and so I decided to stop ski racing and started working at the ski area. So I was 17, a senior in high school. I started working at Snow Summit, and I've worked either part-time or full-time ever since then. So I've been there almost 20, I think it's coming up on 28 years. And so even when I was going to college, I was coming home on the weekends or coming up here on the weekends and working, and then Christmas breaks and in the spring breaks. My wife now, but girlfriend at the time, still lived up here. So that was another motivation to come home. And so then I got out of school. Dick was I was coaching the race team that whole time. And he was pretty adamant about me continuing to coach the race team. In fact, wanted me to take the program over now that I was out of school. I think a lot of that motivation was his kids were right in the thick of it. They were racing and very competitive, very good ski racers. And I think they liked my style for some reason. And so he really wanted me to keep doing that. So I kept doing that. I ran the race team right out of college. I ran it for, I don't know, probably at least 5 or 6 years, the whole time telling them, this isn't what I want to do forever. I'm not going to be a coach forever. In fact, I was at that point starting to burn out on coaching a little bit. And I think during that time I did a little bit of coaching at the high school for a football team a little bit and had some fun doing that. But I was getting a little burned out on coaching before I even had my own kids, which was scaring me a little bit. And I thought, boy, I better make sure he knows this isn't what I want to do for a career. And
so finally he figured out enough is enough. You'd really burned out on this coaching thing.
Yeah, a little bit.
So kind of walk us through how you moved up through the organization.
Yeah, so he had me continue to at least be the program director for the race team, and then had me take over in the marketing world, pretty much all the on-site events and the host program. We had a big volunteer host program, anywhere between 50 and 75 volunteer hosts that would come in and ski. So I had to manage that as well as all the events. And we were doing a lot of events back then. We used to do, obviously a lot of people remember the X Games. And then after that, we used to do MTV Snowed In events, which was like 2 weeks where MTV was here filming for a full week. We did a lot of big events, Triple Crowns, just some high caliber, big televised events. And so I got to all of a sudden start running those events from an on-site standpoint, all the logistics, the operations, that kind of stuff, and really liked it. Really enjoyed the challenge of that, because it was a challenge getting a lot of, especially get these TV producers and these guys in here, and they want to run the world, but you got to put them back to reality of what we can do, and then also try to figure out how we can do it. And yeah, I'll tell you a quick funny story. We were doing those MTV Snowed In days. My wife always laughs about this. I'll make myself sound stupid. And I was waiting to talking to one of the producers. He tells me, okay, first you're going to take J-Lo here, then you're going to take J-Lo there, and then you're going to move J-Lo over here. And any questions? And I just said, again, I was early 20s, newly married. All I did was work. I mean, we just worked. I never felt more like a country bumpkin in my life, because I go, yeah, I got one question. Who's J-Lo? And he just looks at me. Jennifer Lopez, are you kidding me? You don't know who that is? And I just went, oh, the Fly Girl. Yeah, she's like a dancer or something, right? I don't know. And it was the beginning of the end of my relationship with that guy. But we had a lot of that stuff. NSYNC was here. We did a lot of really, really top-notch shows. So I got involved with that, and that trickled down to really understanding that I really liked the ops part of stuff, the operations stuff, even more so than the marketing world. And that's when things kind of started to turn a little bit for me directionally.
And then you moved into operations, if I understand, after the event thing,
Yep.
right?
Yep. It was about that point. Carl Klauser actually offered me a job. Carl was the mountain manager at that time, and had done a lot of the maintenance, snowmaking, grooming, that kind of stuff. And it was at that point he was taking over that, as well as a lot of the operations, lift ops, patrol, parking, that kind of stuff. And he needed help, and he came to me and said, hey, would you have any desire to start kind of being my assistant in this world? And I said, yeah, 100%. Again, I struggled with marketing a bit, because you never knew, even these big events, it was awesome to do the event, but you just never knew what the effect was. It's like, when you build a house, you see the house at the end of it. Marketing's tough, because you do all this stuff and you really don't know what it really did for you. How many people watched? How many people did it impact? Who actually came because of it? You never knew. And I always had kind of struggled with that a bit. And so I said, yeah, I'd like to do that. So I worked under Carl for quite a few years as his assistant. Really worked a lot with a lot of the night functional groups, snowmaking, grooming, and then a lot of the frontline, lift ops and patrol for him.
I'm curious, Wade, did the things that you studied in college carry over at all to the work that you were actually doing?
It's funny. My wife and I have talked about that a lot, and I would tell you, I don't think there was any classes I took that necessarily translated to what I did. That said, the life lessons, 100%. And what I mean by that is learning how to prioritize and time manage and figure out, again, I wasn't a huge academia guy. I didn't sit there and read books from cover to cover, but I'd figure out how to skim through and get what I needed out of that. And I think that's actually worked well for me even now, where you can't get caught up in reading it cover to cover. You'll never have the time. Right. And so, and dealing with people, I lived in the dorms for 2 years. And again, a lot with the athletes, and it was, just that living environment and dealing with people that close and learning how to manage that is huge. So that part of it, I would say, yeah, for sure.
So now there's a little bit of a twist in your career. You decide you're going to leave Snow Summit and do something different.
I wasn't sure. I had taken some summers off in the past, and actually Scott Towsley, who a lot of people know up here, he'd taken me on to do some snowmaking in other places. So I'd learned how to weld and did a bunch of work for him in the summers, which accelerated my knowledge of the ski industry, what's under the ground quite a bit in the summers. And And then one summer, Tim Wood actually came to me, and he had taken over selling docks at Pine Knot. He knew my history of working on the lake. I'd worked on the lake since I was about 13 to 23 in the summers, and he had known that, and so he asked if I'd be interested at all in selling docks for him for that summer. And I thought, well, yeah, maybe I'll take another summer off and do that kind of thing. It was going to be a slow summer at this hill, so I thought, oh, all right. And he goes, yeah, but the catch is you got to go get your real estate license. And so I had about, I think maybe 2 weeks to go get my real estate license. So I had to drive to like Fresno or something. I don't remember. And got my real estate license and did that for a summer. And it was super successful, really, really fun. It was good. And so when that summer ended, he was going, hey, do you want to stick around? And it was when the housing market was booming, things were really going, and would you like to stay and get into real estate? And it just happened to be the same time that Snow Summit bought Bear Mountain. So Snow Summit bought Bear Mountain. And so I went to Dick going, hey, from a financial standpoint, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, I can go make about 5 times what I was making here. I had made in the summer more money than I'd ever made working at Snow Summit in my life. And I go, money-wise, this is like a no-brainer. I should go do this. And Dick said, yeah, but we just bought Bear Mountain. It hadn't even closed yet. And now I've got 2 ski areas, and I've got you and Carl. And now I got to split 2 ski areas between you guys from a mountain managing and operations standpoint. So now I really need you. And, truthfully, as much as financially it was a good opportunity, I really didn't love the work. I mean, it was a lot of talking on the phone, and I liked the people, but I didn't necessarily, I've always been kind of an outdoor guy, and sitting on the phone talking to people just wasn't super sexy to me, and it wasn't what I was passionate about. And so Dick definitely stepped up at that point and offered me a little bit more money for sure. Nowhere near what I would have made staying in that world, but a little bit more money and enough of my own, a little bit more in charge of my own destiny, because Carl was going to go really run Bear, and I was going to stay at Snow Summit and be able to start really running things the way I wanted to run at Snow Summit. And so I took that. I followed what I was passionate about and did that. And then funny enough, obviously the housing market crashed a couple of years later, or about a year later, and you just go, well, I guess that was a good decision. And again,
lucky than good, huh?
Yeah, I think I've been blessed, to be honest. I've been blessed in a lot of areas that.
So now you're the mountain manager at Snow Summit. Is that?
That's correct.
That means you're the boss of Snow Summit.
Well, I mean, Dick was the general manager. As the mountain manager, there was other guys at that level. We had Chris Riddle as the marketing guy. We had Steve Hamp and Riskin, and I was the mountain manager. I had all the maintenance and operations departments, the snowmaking,
Sure.
grooming, terrain parks, lifts and patrol and those kinds of things. And then some years later, one of my mentors, I'll call him, and good friends in life, passed away, Bob Sokolowski. And when Bob passed away, I took on a lot of his responsibilities as well, which were the lift maintenance and compressor house and electrical and that kind of stuff. So slowly but surely, I'd taken over a lot of, and that crossed over between Bear and Summit. So I'd taken over a lot of those departments.
So can you kind of walk us through? So now you own Summit and Bear. Kind of walk us through what happens next in terms of who owns who, and some people get kind of confused about that. Can you walk us through who buys who out and all of that?
I think I was confused half the time too. No, it was, Dick had come to us, to be fair, right before he was ready to do it. And when I say us, kind of the senior management group, and said, hey, it's, I'm going to sell this place, and we're going to actively pursue selling the resort. And I thought, holy moly, what does this mean for me? Because you just don't know who's going to buy it. And frankly, that was a pretty intense time. It was very interesting to sit there and because you've got a loyalty to Dick and the people that you've worked for, the board, but you also are trying to think, especially me at that point, I was, maybe mid to late 30s, late 30s, almost 40, and my career's far from over. And you don't know, whoever comes in could decide that you're on the cutting room block that next day because they want to bring in your own management. So
Sure.
it was super interesting because you want to do what you can do to help Dick and sell the place and get as much for it as he can, and be that guy at the same time, all while doing it in a way that hopefully you impress the people that are buying you to keep you and want you to stay. And so we went through that process, and there was about at least 10 or more groups that were interested in the beginning. They narrowed it down to 5. We had about 5 groups, and it was everywhere from Mammoth, who did end up buying us, to Vail, to some private equity groups, Boeing Ski Resorts. There was about 5 groups that I and myself and a couple others were kind of the spearhead of being the conduit between them asking questions and answering all the questions and due diligence, and trying to make sure that you're, again, being very honest with the new buyers, but also trying to be as much of a salesman somewhat for the sellers. And so that was quite the process. We went through all that, and Mammoth ended up buying us, which I think was the best option of all of them. To be frank, they were another Southern California-ish ski area that knows the market, that was privately run before, that has the same kind of history. Had it been Vail, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, frankly. I mean, those guys come in and bring their own management and their own guys. And so, Mammoth was good about that. But at the same time, not to say that when Mammoth came in, it wasn't difficult too, because no one's going to come in and run it exactly the way it's been run for the last 60 years. I mean,
Sure.
You always buy something thinking you can do a better job than the last guy, right? And so, they came in with a lot of ideas, and a lot of people that, a lot of guys that knew that they would be leaving or would want to retire or be done after the sale anyway, and some that didn't, and that they looked at and skimmed the fat on. And a lot of that was in a motivation to really run. Truthfully, we had run Summit and Bear Mountain almost siloed, even though we were one company. We kind of ran very individually. And so one of the first things they did was go, no, we're running, you guys are less than, a couple miles apart. There's no reason you shouldn't be running as one. And so that was probably my biggest change. Once they came in, I became, I think the title was Vice President of Operations. And I then basically had all those same departments, but at both areas. So Carl then worked under me. And, I basically had all of the operations, maintenance departments wrapped up under me, working for Mammoth.
So Mammoth to the new company, how'd that happen?
So Mammoth had us for, I think, about 3 years ish. And then in a very interesting move, and anyone that knows a little bit about the ski industry knew somebody had to make a move like this soon. Vail was really buying up all these ski areas and really becoming a real juggernaut in the industry. There's a few other places trying to do that, but no one was really making a big move until Altera formed. And there's a lot of misconception of, I remember right in the beginning, it was Aspen bought us, but no, it really wasn't Aspen that bought us, or it was KSL that bought us, or a lot of people just thought it was Vail that bought us. It really was and this gets a little bit complicated, but the owners of Aspen, which is the Crown family, is a very big family in the U.S. They started General Dynamics. They own a lot of stuff, a lot of money. They own Aspen. Them and a company called KSL, which owns a lot of hotels and lodging all over the world. They went in together, and they owned Squaw Valley at the time. They together went in partnership to buy Mammoth. Mammoth, which included us, Mammoth, June, us, they already owned Squaw Valley, and they bought the Inner West Resorts, which was a group of about, I think it was 7 resorts from Vermont to, it's Stratton, Vermont, Snowshoe, West Virginia, Blue Mountain in Canada, Tremblant in Canada, Steamboat in Colorado, Winter Park in Colorado. Those resorts, Squaw Valley, the Mammoth resorts, it basically was like a big merger, which was super interesting because it's in essence, a startup company, but it's a startup company with legacy entities, if that makes sense. You had 60-year-old companies like Mammoth and us and Squaw Valley, USA. The Olympics were held there, right? And these other Inner West resorts all coming together under a new company. I mean, heck, we didn't even have a name for the first. We just called us. We were like Nuco. I mean, everything was on the emails and all that was Nuco because we didn't even have a name. It was probably 6 months into this thing before we even had a name, which is Altera Mountain Company. And even that was interesting because even that was something that we talked about and trying to figure out what the heck we're going to name ourselves. So it's been a super interesting experiment to be in a startup company with already mature businesses in it, and do it on the fly. And the one thing that's been, I tell my guys all the time, thank God though that we got to be in it from the ground floor, because in my opinion, it was either you were going to sit back and try to continue to be privately owned and get gobbled up at some point by somebody, or have an opportunity like this where you're in at the start and you're able to influence the direction that this company heads. And we've had a great influence from day one of being able to really take the company where it's going.
And in pretty short order, they made you the president CEO, is my understanding. Is that right?
Yeah, because I had reported in through Mammoth. So for the first couple months, they kept that reporting structure the same in through Mammoth till they kind of got their hands wrapped around it. I was still going to the meetings like I was a president, but I wasn't. It was kind of weird because I was reporting to a guy that was there. But within about 3 to maybe 5 months or so, they named me COO, president of Big Bear Mountain Resorts, which then gave us, it was more real or internal for us, is it gave us our own individual voice, not having to go through Mammoth to voice our opinions. You kind of had a seat at the table, for lack of a better word, and we've been like that since. I mean, one of the things that I'm super proud of with our company being Altera is they've really gone about it. It's actually a more difficult way to go about this, but they've gone about it in a more difficult but really right way. And the fact that, instead of really managing from top down like a Vail, and again, it's not derogatory towards Vail because they've been very successful and done a very good job. But with Vail, it's similar to, I think I used the analogy to you, Phil, the other day. It's kind of like McDonald's. If I have a cheeseburger here, it's the same as a cheeseburger in Singapore at McDonald's, right? And there's parts of that that's really good because you know what you're going to get. I mean, I'll be honest, when I've traveled abroad a little bit, it's like when you see the Golden Arches, thank God, because I know I can get a burger. But that I'm not, and so they've managed a bit like that where we've taken a different tact, which is, we know that we're a group of unique brands. Even in our mission statement that we're a group of unique brands that we manage ourselves and within our brand and within our communities for an overall push within the group in Altera. And so they've really let me and us and our group steer the ship where we want, as long as we're able to give them the results that they need and we agree on those. I mean, it's not like it's in a vacuum where they just tell me what we've got to do. It's, hey, what do you think? Can you guys do this? And how does that work? And we talk very frequently about 3 legs of the stool for us, which is our guests. And so, our guest scores, our survey scores, what we produce in guest satisfaction has to be up to a certain level that we agree upon. Our employees, we do a lot of employee surveying, a lot of work within our employees to try to level check, our employee satisfaction and our financial stakeholders. Obviously, we've got to hit the numbers that we agree that is, one, feasible, and two, is what we're trying to get to. And so within those three parameters, we've always added a fourth, which is community. It's not as good a visual with a four-legged stool because it can stand on three, but is the community, and that's really our responsibility, not Altera's, to make sure that we're satisfying the needs there too. So it's been super challenging, I will tell you that, to try to figure out how to manage all these pieces and bring it together under one umbrella. But really rewarding when it works, and it really is working.
Wait, give us a little sense. Year-round employees, you have about how many?
Year-round, full-time, about 120-ish.
And in the winter, you have about how many?
We can bust at the seams to about 1,500.
About 1,500 in the winter.
Yeah.
And in the summer, you have about how many?
It's in the neighborhood. It's over 200, probably, depending on where we're at, 220-ish.
Sure. Wade, give us a snapshot of your family. You married a lady you dated in high school. Talk a little bit about that and your children.
I am.
Or they're not children, I guess, anymore.
Yeah, for any of you guys that have kids that think they're super serious in high school about something, you go, that's just a high school thing. Be careful, because it could end up your wife, or their wife, or their husband. No, my wife, Celia, at the time when you knew her, was Zamorano, when you were her principal, and Reeser now for the last 21 years. We dated in high school and out of high school through college, and then got married the year after I got out of college. And we've been married coming up on 22 years. And she obviously was born and raised here as well. Family history here in Big Bear as well. And we're super fortunate to have our families here. And then I've got 2 sons and a daughter. My oldest son is 16. He'll be a junior in high school this year. My younger son just turned 13. He'll be an 8th grader. And then I have a 6-year-old that just graduated kindergarten. So I don't know what we couldn't figure out, but we've got a pretty big range from 16 to 6. But
that walker to go across the graduation.
Oh man, I'm telling you. But I'll tell you, it's having the 2 boys and then having my little girl at the end has been actually such a blessing. And we kid around. I don't kid around. I'm actually super serious. It's made my boys will be much better fathers than they ever would have if they wouldn't have had a little sis that they've had to figure out. Wow, this is a different thing. Just having to be part of that. So.
Wait, let's just take a couple of seconds, then we'll see if people have some questions. If you were to roll the clock out 4 or 5 years down the road, what kinds of things do you see happening up there? You got 2 ski areas, you got a golf course. What's on the agenda?
We've since the minute Mammoth bought us, we put more capital. They gave us more capital investment money than we had seen. Well, in my 20-year career at that point, that was one of the things that was the most fun about this, as challenging as it has been. Frankly, and Dick, if he were here to say it, he would admit to it. I mean, we talked a lot. Dick and I talked on a daily basis. He would admit to you that most of my career with him, we were at a very mature phase of our company. We had done a lot of the expanding. We had done a lot of the developing. We'd done a lot of that. And the board, we're all at a very mature phase where it was kind of, hey, we're gonna stash our nuts a lot. We're not gonna risk a whole lot. We're not gonna go spend a lot of money on a whole lot. We're gonna keep the place really clean and really, maintain it well, but we're not gonna go do anything big. And that's where I lived a lot of my career with Dick. And then when Mammoth came in, it was no, we want to spend money. So tell us where to spend some money. And so that's been one of the most fun part of the last, 5-6 years is you've had a lot of guys like me and there's others that have been, I've got guys that have worked for us for 40 plus years and that have had great ideas And we've been able to now put those ideas into motion by having some money, and it's paid off huge. If I know most people have been around the base areas, but if you've been around the base areas at either of the resorts, they look nothing like they did even just a few years ago. They're greatly improved. We've done a lot more summer activities and businesses, and just huge amounts of improvement that have both paid off from the guest standpoint, but also from a work environment, employee standpoint, and then very much so from the financial end. And so that said, in that same spirit, we've got a pretty robust 5-year plan. Frankly, the COVID situation has put a delay in that. We went from, spending as a company, like $180 million in capital investments to about 50 because of this. And so there's a huge pull away this year. But I anticipate getting back on track by next year, provided everything stays somewhat stable. And, if anyone's been to Bear Mountain, we basically had started, you couldn't do everything all at once. We had started at Snow Summit. We'd done a lot of work the last 3, 4, 5 years at Snow Summit. Last year, we really took a turnover to Bear Mountain. We invested about $4 million, almost $5 million at Bear Mountain's base area. It's amazing. It's one of the best beachfront ski opportunities I've ever seen anywhere. Spent a bunch of money there. We were going to do a phase 2 this summer. We obviously didn't get to do it, but I would look towards finishing that phase 2 over there at Bear Mountain. We've got some lift replacements that we need to do. I mean, we've just got some old lifts that you start going, boy, we just need more efficiency out of our lifts. And then, one of the, what's that?
2 areas coming together? Is that?
I was going to say, one of our pushes really is, someday, and I don't like to freak people out, but someday, ultimately this is all working towards getting ourselves prepared to be able to connect the areas and be able to ski from one area to the other and mountain bike from one area to the other. And then you start becoming much more than just Southern California skiing. Once you can do that, you're actually getting into the realm of real skiing. And I hate saying that. I've grown up here, obviously I have a huge passion for it, but we're still considered just Southern California skiing at times. You do that and now it's different.
Sure. All right, let's see if people have some questions or some comments. Any questions out there, either chats or those of you who are with us have some questions for Wade? Anybody?
I have a question for you, Wade. I'll start us off. Wade, so in watching your kids grow up, how have you kind of directed them and pushed them towards skiing, or how do you let them decide what activities they're going to do?
It's funny. I was just in a meeting with your mom today, and I mentioned to her, it's pretty funny that skiing's such a big part of my life. Ski racing was such a big part of life, and none of my kids have ski raced, actually. They all ski well, and we have great time, and we go on family vacation skiing and that kind of stuff, but neither of my boys. My daughter's still probably a little young to make that call, but neither of my boys ski raced at all. So, again, good skiers. They love it. They love the sport. But no, none of them ski raced, interestingly enough.
Interesting. Any other questions from the folks out there? Wave or jump up and down if you have one.
Got one.
Al?
Reeser, I've known you through all your career and followed you through high school, and especially in football.
Yeah.
And of course, there's one play that sticks in the minds of many people who followed Big Bear High School football. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. It's so long ago, Al, I can hardly remember it. And no, I kid around. I still, I see a lot of guys still almost daily that I grew up playing football with. And one of them is Chris Winslow, works for me still. And we see each other every day, and we've kidded around in the past. And Chris goes, you got a lot of publicity over that one play, but you realize no one thinks you did anything else except for that one play all through high school. No, it was awesome. I mean, to be part of that, I've told my son, I've been fortunate enough that we were able to do that my senior year where we won CIF and went undefeated, and it was an unbelievable experience. And I've told my older son, I hope someday he can have that opportunity to do that, because it's so rewarding and fulfilling. And it's one of those memories, you know, no matter what anyone says, yeah, it's just high school football. But at the end of the day, when you end it like that, and it is something that you'll never forget. And I actually got to watch my nephew was on the team a couple years ago that did it, and I got to go up and watch them do that, and it was pretty special to get to see that. And it was funny how many of us were in the stands that were in my year. So yes, it was in Bishop. It was cold as all get up, and we had played a pretty crappy first half. In fact, I think we were losing at halftime, like 12-0, which for us, I don't know that we were ever losing at halftime. I don't know that in 2 years we had been losing at halftime, and we came out and played much, much better in the second half and put some points on the board. And there was only a few minutes left, and they were driving it down our stinking throats, and it wasn't looking all that good. And I don't know why the heck they threw a pass, because I think they could have just kept running it and probably scored. And instead they decided to throw a pass, and I was able to pick it off on about the 20-yard line, and then just thought, oh my God, don't fumble. And I didn't even want to run it back. I just wanted to hold on to the ball and someone tackle me, and let's get out of here and be done. And so it was, it was pretty fun.
Karen has a question, Tori.
Karen asked, you said you were an outdoor man. Do you feel that you are still that way, or more behind the desk?
Oh, I'm definitely way more behind the desk now. I still want to be an outdoor guy, and I still want to be doing that stuff. And I think my kids and wife would tell you they pay the consequences, because when I get home, I'm like, okay, now what are we going to do? All right, let's go out. Let's do this. Let's do that. And they're like, man, we just want to relax and calm down. And the other day I was walking the hill, and one of the smart aleck guys that's worked the same amount of years as me, so he can get away with it, says, oh my God, it's like seeing a Sasquatch. You're out here. That's like a Bigfoot sighting, you know, and giving me a hard time. So not as much as I would like, but it's kind of a necessity also.
Wade, thank you for your time. Thanks for sharing your story. Very interesting. Thanks for you there with us. Next week, the 29th, Megan Metters. Megan is the head of the Mom and Dad's Project. She's also a local lady, and she's really an interesting lady, and I think you'll enjoy hearing her story, as well as if you don't know anything about the Mom and Dad's Project, it'll be an opportunity for you to understand that whole program. So I hope you'll make plans now to join us next Monday, the 29th, right before 4th of July, 5:30. Thanks for being here, Wade. Thank you for your time. Much appreciation. Take care. Good night, all.